So I am recording right now, but that's okay. I'm just doing it just so we can just go into it whenever I can cut it out.
That's fine.
Going live on Instagram.
Okay.
What's up, guys? Reinhartz. So I know that I was going to be going live with EMZT Radio, but unfortunately we're having technical difficulties. Funny thing with a Mercury day, that's pretty much, how that goes. So we're in the process of actually just staging this and recording it like old school, and that will be the go-to with that. It'll be available on my Reinhartz Chaos Astrologer YouTube channel and Miss Nostradamus as well. You can always just follow me at Ms_Nostradamus on Twitter, and I will reroute all the linkage there for that. But sorry, I mean, I'm usually fashionably late anyway, but this is just actually technical difficulties. I'm actually prepared for this for once.
She's not lying.
That's Matthew Jordan from EMZT Radio. So yeah, we'll talk about this soon, and yeah, thanks. There you go. Well, now people are notified. Easy as that. Easy squeezy lemon peasy.
I wonder something. Hangouts. Do I have you on Google Hangouts? Or you don't have Google Hangouts, do you?
I don't think so. I don't think I have Google Hangouts.
Okay.
Sorry. Alright, so I'm recording now. Alright guys, so today is the 6th of June, 2018, and this is a special transit talk I'm going to have with Matthew Jordan from EMZT Radio. We were initially going to do this on a live stream, but unfortunately we're having technical difficulties, as I already said, so we're going to go ahead and go into this. So as recently, Bill Gates, as Matt has told me about, has been ranting on about this fear-mongering thing with there being a pandemic for the flu, which if you actually go to my rayreinhartz.blog WordPress website, back in January 6, 2018, earlier this year, I already talked about your tips and tricks homeopathic-wise and your astrological heads up with surviving the 2018 flu season. So, Matt, what did you necessarily hear about Bill Gates talking about this?
Talking about, I'm going to have to bring it back up here, but Gates basically was talking about 30 million people being wiped out.
Wow. Wow. Statistically, I guess that would make sense with the populations. I wonder if he just did math statistics off that, because technically the 1918 flu, which influenza pandemic, which happened obviously globally, but it started with the Spanish flu primarily in Europe and then spread everywhere, estimated that there was 40 million deaths worldwide from that. So he said 30 million are going to die?
Yes. A fast-moving airborne pathogen can wipe out 30 million people in less than a year.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Well, the history of the influenza outbreaks is very fascinating, actually, to talk about. I'll go ahead and go over that, and then I'm actually going to discuss a couple of the transit aspects, as a matter of fact, that are ongoing, that are contributing to this. This is where he's actually getting this from. Well, I can't say for sure he's getting it from that, but, you know, just as JP Morgan says, only billionaires have astrologers, not millionaires. So since he's worth, what, $93 billion, I'm sure he has an astrologer. But,
yeah.
but anyway, so just some brief history on influenza, and then I'm going to actually just do a recap of some of my blog entries that I've done as well, because since Bill Gates is shining the light on this, this is an opportune time to talk about this, and that's why me and Matt thought this was important to discuss. So Hippocrates, who's actually the father of modern medicine, the Hippocratic Oath more or less is named after him, wrote about a major epidemic of influenza in 1412 BC. Extreme outbreaks that occurred they occur every 20 to 30 years. When was the last time there was a huge flu outbreak?
Wow, that's a good question. I'll look that up for you. Last major flu. Oops. Apparently, this is a big topic. The last major flu epidemic was in 1968.
Ah, that one had 700,000 deaths. I have the years down there, but I didn't know when was the last one because my notes are kind of scattered. So, noted pandemics have been the 1918 one, which was worldwide, and then in 1957 to 1968. there was estimated 2 million to 700,000 deaths. And the only latest one, I guess, that wasn't that deadly was, you remember the H1N1, swine flu?
Yes.
Because that's a strain with that as well.
2009, yeah.
Yep. And apparently it got in Asia in 2003. But, let's see. There's... fascinating. So, although Bill does say that it's going to be the flu, there is nothing necessarily concrete per se that it has to be the flu. It could be some sort of superbug mutated virus of some kind, because apparently there's a reoccurring theme in Europe every generation since the 1700s for the Black Death. So that's something also to keep in mind. But influenza plagues years and outbreaks. There was the 1918 global, 1957 in the U.S., 1968 U.S., 2003 the U.S., 2009 was Mexico, and then 1771 was Russia, 1347 was Asia, and 1330s was China. Those are all influenza outbreak things. And
there's
what's up?
A meteorological, I can speak tonight, meteorological explanation too. And that is, if you notice that every year we're talking about 18, 57, 68, and 09, we're also all La Nina years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's good to know. I didn't even think of that. Thank you, Matt. So, the influenza, I'm just going to go ahead and read from a book since I have a video. I guess I could show this. I love this book. I can't even remember where I found it, but it says that it's €7.99, so I guess it's from Europe. But it's Pandemics, 50 of the World's Worst Plagues and Infectious Diseases by Peter Moore. I'm just going to read the influenza insert here. So, the agent is a virus. 3 types of influenza viruses exist. The first recorded was 1412 BC, and it's a global epidemic. Infectivity is fairly low. Severity of illness is about 60 to 80%. Likelihood of dying ill is 20%, and bioweapon threat is 10%. All right. So the influenza virus is a very simple biological particle in that it only contains 8 genes, but when it's floating freely in the air, however, like all viruses, it comes to life with and invades the living cells and hijacks its biological machinery. In a matter of hours, one viral particle can dictate that the cell builds hundreds and thousands of more new versions of itself. The origins for the recorded history of mankind, flu has normally been caused only in a low level of infection, but it occasionally breaks out and wreaks havoc. The good news about this virus is most people become immune to it once they have encountered a particular strain. The bad news is that the virus evolves incredibly rapidly and constantly forming new strains. If a new strain is similar to one that has existed before, many people will fight it off. But on the occasion when there is a jump and change, i.e. rapid mutation in the virus, it can trigger a pandemic. Symptoms and effects. If you think you have a touch of influenza, you probably don't. Flu hits hard and it will put you in bed for parts of the best part of a week and will leave you weak for days. Main symptoms are fatigue, depression, muscular aches and pains, whole body, and general weakness. And then I had The Disease Ecology by Andrew Lermont, and specifically this was highlighting the last major global epidemic which happened 100 years ago. So influenza mainly spreads by droplet or soiled hands, etc. Britain experienced moderate to severe epidemics in 1803, 1831, 1837, so that's more constant than the 20 or 30 year ETA for that. It does emphasize that war seems to be a trend with pandemics as well. So there was obviously the pandemic during World War I. What were the years for World War I again?
14 to 18, 1914, 1918.
Ah, okay. Yeah, and then it said, but 1918 saw the beginning of one of the greatest of all pandemics, and it lasted till 1921. So it started essentially in 1915, but it got at its worst in 1918. But the peak of the deaths was between 1918 to 1921. So if we were going to go off synchronistic-wise by 100 years, this is kind of what Bill Gates is talking about with that. And with transits, as a matter of fact, we have a couple of things going on. So there is 3 players with this astrologically. We have Neptune in Pisces, we have Jupiter in Scorpio, and now we have the recent transit that's now begun with Taurus in Uranus, or Uranus and Taurus, sorry. So in 2011, Neptune went into Pisces. I find it also fascinating too that universal healthcare pretty much kicked in 2011. Wasn't that right? It's about then?
2011, yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah.
It seems about right.
So Neptune is associated with self-undoing or self-sabotage, or it does have to do with conspiracies. So myself, I just have a personal bias, obviously, against the modern medical industry for good reason. And a lot of them pushing, like, for example, Bill Gates is talking about getting Trump to back a universal flu shot. But if Bill Gates actually is educated in himself and knows thoroughly well what the flu pandemic is all about and how influenza works, he would know that a universal shot will actually kill more people. So I'm torn between if Bill just doesn't know enough about biology and disease, or if he knows about this and he just has no problem with people dying. I don't know. What do you think? I know that's a really touchy subject to bring up, but I mean, I looked at it.
I'm not 100% sure on. I think, though, I mean, you're talking about the guy that runs the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Obviously, he believes in eugenics.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked at his chart while we were having technical difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, just going off what I saw, just for the hell of it, let's talk about this. So he has his Mars and Mercury and Neptune all in the 12th house of collective secrets, meaning that his motives are hidden from everyone, but just the general public as well. So this is a chart that insinuates conspiracy or conspiring with people. And he does have a huge stellium in Scorpio. And fascinatingly enough, he has Jupiter conjunct with Pluto in the 10th house. Also Uranus in that house as well. Meaning that his main motive in life is to dominate and control information. I mean, Microsoft.
Yeah, well, Microsoft already does that in a way.
Yeah.
Google does that in a way.
Yeah, and he's conspiring with.
If you really think about it, like, no, go ahead.
Yeah, he's basically conspiring with people to basically control the masses. Is he pro-socialist?
Well, I'm pretty sure he is. I mean, most. I know he's up in Seattle, but most Silicon Valley types are socialist, because a lot of them come from socialist countries.
Right. Yeah, I mean that kind of says it right there. I mean, we're saying it without saying it, but.
Yeah, but I think, but look at it this way. I mean, Microsoft, Google, and probably Facebook control 97% of the information on the internet.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to be fair too, I've talked about this, and most people that may see this probably don't even know anything about my blog website, and even some people who used to follow me on Facebook. I got banned for talking about this, 5 months ago. So this is actually the topic I got banned for. So, what is that?
Show you what, Kane?
Oh, you turned on the app.
Yeah.
Hi, Kane.
I set up insects.
Oh, he's talking about the viruses.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't know we were, I didn't know it was going to interrupt the whole process here.
No, it's okay. I don't care. Hi, Kane.
Whiter.
Did you said whiter or rider?
Whiter.
Rider. Okay. So I'm gonna go on, Kane and Max. So
yes. Keep going. I'll
initially, Neptune went into Neptune in Pisces began in 2011. It will last until 2025. It represents self-undoing collectively. Also, Neptune being in Pisces is synchronistic throughout history for plagues, pandemics. So that's the culprit right there. And funny that universal health care has been launched simultaneously when Neptune went into Pisces, which is where I have my reservations about actual modern healthcare, which is definitely something that people should be trying to be self-reliant, more or less, about taking care of their health to the best of their ability. Modern medicine is great for immediate intervention, but first and foremost, it's a healthy lifestyle that needs to take precedence. But
ounce of prevention and pound of cure.
Right. So, as the century anniversary of the influenza pandemic that began this year, 2018 is when we're synchronistically having this flu pandemic. Jupiter was in Scorpio, indicating widespread disease or infection throughout society and the greater good. As of the past month, the final nail in the coffin has begun with the next pandemic, with Uranus now going into Taurus. So one thing that I'd like to highlight is that the characteristics of influenza. People actually don't really understand this, that it's actually a malnutrition disease, as a matter of fact. And the people who are most susceptible are people in poverty-stricken areas, or primarily really poor hygienic areas that are obviously just the poor class that don't have access to good nutrition. So it's regarded to as a winter disease made worse during wartime chaos and undernutrition. Particularly the 1918 event spread to many tropical countries in India, and for an instance, it caused millions of deaths, mainly in and around Bombay, where there was and is much overcrowding in the industrialized housing and slums too. So all the major crowded metropolitan areas, all the poor areas, are going to be the places that actually are impacted the most. And unfortunately too, in recent years, there has been quite a few, as you know, toxic agriculture. And I have personally myself...
Well, it's very much toxic agriculture.
I don't have any concrete anything with this. This is just my personal experience. But I'm not on any kind of, assistance or, food stamps. But I can see things that are posted WIC at the stores. I've purchased these in the past, just because they're cheaper, right? Every single time that there's some sort of outbreak or something, or even when I'm not keeping up with that, because, I'm terrible with that, I, myself, or someone in my home has been sick from WIC products. Only WIC products. I'd go back to the store, like, the next week, and go, wow, so that's the thing that got me sick, and then look up online, and there was some sort of recall on those. And I go and buy the same products, but just not the WIC-approved ones, and I don't have any problems. I've actually subjected myself to that on purpose, because my body's pretty resilient, to see if the things that are not WIC actually would make me sick. And continuously, I have not had problems with anything that's not WIC. So, I hate to go all conspiracy nut on everything, but I find it interesting that the things that are being sold primarily to people who are on food stamp or food assistance or WIC programs are the ones that are mostly recalled for toxic agriculture. Don't you think that's weird? I'm trying not to go all Alex Jones on this, but, how can I not? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure something out here. I need to look up U.S. wheat subsidies.
Yeah. But it says in 1914 to 1918, the war shows that urban deaths were higher in North and West England and in Wales. Immunization against influenza remains a difficult problem because of the several strains involved. Immunity conferred against one strain is apparently a little effect against another. So that right there in itself would be why Trump is not supporting the universal flu shot.
Yeah.
Trump is not for that, because he knows. So...
Wheat is in the farm subsidies.
Oh, yeah?
So, it's like corn.
Right.
It's not really about quality, it's about quantity.
Right. Well, the things that made me sick in particular were eggs and frozen veggies.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't even wheat that was making me sick primarily. But what's unfortunate is that veggies, even the frozen stuff, that's a high source of a lot of nutrients that you actually need to make sure that you have an immune system to fight the flu. I actually have another book here. It's the Prescription for Nutritional Healing. And if anybody actually wants this, honestly, this book is so useful. I've got 3 or 4 copies myself because I keep finding them at thrift stores. Not even joking. I actually do think it's fascinating. Ever since everybody's gotten, free healthcare, that's where like all of these books here. I mean, I know you can't see, but you've seen my books before. That's where all these books come from, are thrift stores.
Right.
And a lot of them are what has taught me homeopathy. I'm obviously taking my degree and everything, but primarily everybody just gave up on these books. Like, people have them, and they're just like, I got health insurance now. I'm just going to toss those books. And I can tell by how great and mint condition a lot of the books are in, that people bought them probably as a last resort because they didn't have health care, and they never actually read them, which is very sad. But for influenza, it's known as the flu, a viral infection. I'll go over the highlighted parts. And then I'm going to go over the different vitamins that you need to fight this flu. So there's the outbreaks of influenza are very common. Huh? Did you say something?
What about hormones? And I'm not talking about hormones in the wheat, or hormones in the meat, hormones in like wheat and corn.
Yeah, I mean, that could affect things. That would essentially be like the makeup of the actual food itself. If it were altered in any way, it could make, have some sort of drawbacks, toxic effects. Which is why, like, I'm not a vegan and I'm not into all that, but like, I try to just stick to as close to natural as I can get. The more that you alter something, the more problems are going to happen. That's the same argument just for the fact that we started talking about Bill Gates. The difference between Apple computers and Windows computers. Despite the fact that, Apple's expensive and it doesn't have a lot of customizable things, the actual program and the system itself for Macs is substantially just more durable and consistent, and doesn't have as many issues and I guess weaknesses or whatever, vulnerabilities, as Windows does, because they basically cut holes in Windows programming more or less to make it personalized for people. So people can choose all of these, personalized, characteristics in their system, but then every single thing that you do to tweak the original system, it compromises the actual strength and foundation of the actual computer itself. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I apply that same universal law to food, to health, and everything. The more that you throw synthetic or artificial things into your body, your food, or anything else, you're going to eventually have some sort of really, really traumatic repercussions for that. It's going to wreak havoc on you. It'll be a long-term thing usually, because our bodies are supposed to heal themselves. That's the whole point of, Hippocrates and Socrates saying that you need to heal thyself. So it takes a long time for our bodies to wear down. And as a matter of fact, the FDA and the CDC, back obviously when Kennedy was president back in the 60s, so the Uranus-Pluto square that just, finished up, the Uranus-Pluto square conjunction was the beginning of the havoc that the Uranus-Pluto square just reaped on everything. So it was the federalization of the FDA, and the FDA being more involved in corporate interests as well as the CDC, that actually encourages people to eat more food that has minimal or no nutritional value whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And then they're making it expensive for people to actually eat real food, because it's all about profits as opposed to anything. And that's another thing why the FDA and the CDC need to be completely dismantled at this point. I still think it drives me crazy. there's some sort of organization that's in Africa that calls themselves EMZTs that is studying pandemics and flu outbreaks in Africa. And I'm like, who thought that? Because the anise star comes from the Middle East and North Africa, and it's the #1 herbal supplement you can take to fight the flu. Are you telling me that somebody didn't do that on purpose? It's like an acronym say to anise. Like, I was joking about it. I almost think seriously that they did that on purpose, so if anybody hears the word anise, they associate it with the actual organization. And they go, oh yeah, I heard of that organization, and then it just deflects. Which, as a matter of fact, I have this, Boo's actually been drinking all of it, but this alfalfa anise caraway horehound tincture, which helps fight the flu, and since he's drank all of it, at least he won't die from the flu. But yeah, I'm just gonna finish up actually with some of the herbs that'll help with this. So if you actually do contract the flu or influenza of any kind, or you're sick, herbs that help with that are echinacea, ginger, slippery elm, yarrow tea, which I just harvested a crap ton of that, and they're good for influenza. For fever, you can take catnip, enemas. That sounds a little iffy. I don't know about this book. Actually, as a matter of fact, if you just crush up garlic cloves, put them in your socks overnight, your fever will break in about 4 to 6 hours. I know that for a fact because I've done that myself. Also, eucalyptus oil helps, put it near your, drops on your head, or put it in some boiling water for an infusion so you can clear up your sinuses. A tincture of echinacea golden seal would be appropriate for children, so some herbs are actually not safe for kids, but echinacea and golden seal are actually safe, as well as yarrow tea can be given to children as well. Avoid the sugars, obviously, that'll just make it worse. Children who have flu frequently should be checked for thyroid malfunctions. That's something to keep aware of as well, because Uranus being in Taurus, thyroid dysfunctions and thyroid disorders and diseases are going to be prominent. So with children who contract the flu or influenza, they need to have their thyroids checked absolutely, especially if they don't even know if they have an overactive thyroid or an underactive thyroid. And that'll actually be the culprit of mostly what will get most people with that, I think. But influenza is rarely fatal, but a patient can be more susceptible to pneumonia, ear infections, and sinus trouble. So ears is also controlled by Taurus as well. So Uranus being in Taurus, people will likely get ear infections. That could be a sign also that they have an underlying virus that they're still carrying. And so for the nutrients, what you do need is essential ascorbic acid or vitamin C. You need 500,000 or 1,000 milligrams daily in divided doses. Vitamin A, you need 15,000 IU daily. And the beta carotene, 15,000 IU daily. And zinc, dissolve 1 lozenge under the tongue every 2 hours. Then garlic capsules and protein. Protein and iron, people who are mineral deficient, or especially vegans, unfortunately. Vegans are likely going to be the most susceptible people to this flu pandemic. I hate to break it to you all. And unfortunately, too, a lot of vegans tend, like you mentioned the other day, being vegan is more of a political thing, right?
It is. It's more of a political thing than it is an actual thing.
Right. So, and what political spectrum do they subscribe to? Where do they live?
Left of center.
And they live in bigger metropolitan areas, and some of them tend to be poor.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Keep your vegan friends at a distance, because you can actually beef up your immune system and be around people who are infected, but if you actually make yourself, subject to the contaminated area, you can still get it. It just depends on how beefed up your immune system is and how much you can actually fend off the virus itself, depending on how well you're going to do. So nutrition is first and foremost going to be your best bet with that. But I know you got to get going. But do you have any other things you want to talk about with this?
No, I think Kane has spoken.
What did he? What was he saying?
I sent you the list. You have the list now.
Oh, okay.
On your thing.
Ah, okay. I don't see it. Did you send it to me on Skype?
No, it's on Voxer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my phone's not near me. That's okay. I can always do an insert in a little bit, but I know you want to get working, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, I got a lot of work to do. But, it's kind of interesting. I'll tell you that much.
We can talk about this later, because, I'm going to definitely need to do a bunch of follow-ups about this, so.
Okay.
This will just be our filler for us not going live today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll figure it
I'm
out.
hoping I get the situation fixed for next week, and then we can go live next week. We might just end up... You might have to create a Hangout account.
Okay, yeah, I'll just do that. That's totally fine. That's fine. We can do that.